kind of see some references or some similarities between the two. Hello everyone! So today I just want to talk about the Lord of the Rings series and the Narnia series. Now before I get started, I want to say that I would definitely recommend both of these series. For the rest of the video I'm just going to be talking about how they differ and things like that. But I just want to start off by saying I would definitely recommend both of these. So I'm going to start with the Lord of the Rings series. Now this one was actually, when Tolkien was writing this, his intention was to write it for an older audience. So it does have a more adult tone to it, not anything inappropriate or anything like that, but you can tell that it was written for an older audience. His whole goal, or part of his goal for writing this series, was to bring fairy stories, or like fantasy genre, to adults, because at that time it was more of something, the fantasy genre was more just something for kids. So this does have a more serious tone to it. Overall, though, I think that a younger audience could still enjoy this, but that is kind of like his part of his goal in writing this series. Now, there are 4 books here. There's The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. Now, The Hobbit is kind of a standalone book. You could read this and just by itself, and in this one book you get the beginning and the end, you get the whole conclusion of the story. Whereas with these other books, these other 3 really all connect together. So if you wanted to, you could read these by themselves, but if you wanted to go from like the beginning of the story to the conclusion, you'd have to read all 3 of these, and The Hobbit is like the prelude to these. So overall, I would definitely recommend these books if you like fantasy. They're really good. They're not super long. I mean, there's only 4 books here, but they are, at least these ones that I have, they have kind of like smaller writing, so they are fairly long. It is a kind of a long series in that sense, but still, for 4 books in a series, it's not that long. In this one, The Return of the King, it has 5 appendixes at the end that detail like the history of Middle-earth, its people, has like lineages and like all this stuff. It really gave me a insight into Tolkien's whole way of how he created Middle-earth. Like, he really just put a lot of detail into it, and it's really impressive, just all the detail that he came up with this whole series and this whole world of Middle-earth. Because when you read those, I didn't read all the appendixes because they're very long, but when you even read some of them, it's like you're reading history. It's not like just some information on a fantasy series. It's like actual history. It's very, very detailed. There's a lot in here. It's a really good series. Before I read this, I actually saw the movies first, so it was kind of fun to read these after seeing the movies, because obviously I was familiar with the story and the characters, but there was a lot of new scenarios or characters in here that are not mentioned in the movies. So if you're somebody who's only seen the movies and you want to read these, it's not really going to be like reading the exact same story. There's going to be some new stuff, and overall it's really fun. I like it. There's good characters in here, good character development. There's some of these have more battle focused stories in them. There's a lot of stories focused around friendship, loyalty. There's even some stories in here that are kind of what you'd call like a romantic story, but it's not anything that is weird. It goes along with that fantasy genre. It fits in with the series well. So there's a lot of different elements in this series, great characters, and overall I enjoyed it, and I would probably definitely be reading it again. So the next series is the Narnia series. Now this one was written, I think, more for a younger audience, but somebody, who's like an older audience could definitely still enjoy this series. Now this has 7 books in it, and they're not in chronological order. Like these say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and like the first one is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the last one is The Last Battle. You could read these in chronological order, and I think if I were to read them again, which I probably will, I would probably read it in chronological order. In fact, the one that I just finished, I didn't do a review on this, but is The Last Battle, and it just says on the back, last battle, how evil came to Narnia and Aslan led his people to a glorious new paradise. This one was a really good one. It was like the culmination of the whole Narnia series. So there was dealt with a lot of familiar characters. I don't want to give like too much away, but like there were familiar characters that came back and were mentioned in here. So overall, I think it was a good ending to the whole series. And the nice thing about this series is that these are all they're all connected, obviously. They're all part of the Narnia series. So if you want to understand all about Narnia, then you want to read all of these books. But the nice thing is that you could read just one of these books. They're all kind of standalone books. So if you just wanted to just grab one and read it, each book has like a beginning and then like an end to it, so you don't feel like you just kind of read it and then you're stuck in the middle of like a series. Another neat thing about these is that they all kind of have a different theme or focus. Like the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, they're all in like a ship and at sea, so this has like sort of that kind of focus. The Last Battle has a lot more battle kind of theme. The Magician's Nephew takes place a lot more in London. And then like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I think is probably the most popular one, or the most well-known one. That one kind of like introduces you to Narnia and has more of that kind of theme. So overall, I really do like this series. I would definitely read it again. Again, this is something that I kind of get the sense, especially since a lot of the main characters are kids, that it probably was written for more, with the goal or the focus being more for a younger audience, but I think, people who are in an older audience can enjoy this, and enjoy the series. And there's a lot of interesting characters in here, and they're all pretty short. I think each one of these books is like 15 to 16 chapters long, so it's not that long. They're fairly short, but there's a lot that goes on in there. There's a lot of interesting adventures and creatures and all sorts of neat stuff. And there's some kind of, deeper stuff that is dealt with in here and talked about. So overall, I would recommend it, and I will probably definitely be reading this one again as well. So guys, that's both of these series, and again, like I said, I would definitely recommend both of them. I will just say that these are both in the fantasy genre, but Lord of the Rings is kind of more like traditional fantasy. Like I said, it kind of has more of a serious tone to it. It has, like, it does deal, like in The Hobbit, there's like a dragon, and it has more of that sort of fantasy battle kind of focus to it. Whereas Narnia, even though it has some of those similar elements, Narnia has more what I would call like whimsical fantasy elements to it, and some of the creatures that are in the Narnia series are what I would consider more whimsical type of creatures. But overall, these are actually kind of similar, and it's interesting because Tolkien and Lewis were really good friends, and they actually had a group that they would meet called the Inklings, that they would meet in 30s and 40s in like Oxford, England, and in that group, that's where like Tolkien shared Lord of the Rings, and then Lewis got ideas for like Narnia. So both of these series kind of came out, with like similar inspirations, and they both had very different opinions on each each one of these series, but I can kind of see some references or some similarities between the two. In fact, before I read either one of these, I actually read a book about Lewis and Tolkien and their friendship, and after reading that and then reading these, I could definitely see more, influences to one another, and how they were similar, and just things like that. So yeah, overall, I think both of these are really great, and they're definitely a series that you probably would want to read more than once, and I think that really anyone could enjoy them, any age really, and I would definitely recommend them. They're really good. So guys, I hope you're having a great day, and I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!